Okay, so today Casey and I are going to be covering scholarships and grants. The first thing that we're going to dive into is scholarships. So scholarships are basically an award for financial aid for a student to further their education at a college or post-secondary school, and that can be either private or public. But one thing that a lot of times people don't recognize is that scholarships can actually be given to attend events or as financial aid for activities as well. So let's take a look into how they play into the FFA. So some examples of FFA scholarships include the Washington Leadership Conference Scholarship, and that can be given to a student who is interested in attending WLC, and that just helps them to cover the cost of attendance and make sure that everything's covered so that they can attend that. Me personally, I was very fortunate to be able to go to Washington Leadership Conference, and honestly, it was the best week of my life. So I definitely recommend applying for that one and diving into what our scholarships have to offer. Along with that, we have other scholarships that are given to students who are just pursuing education at a higher degree. So they can go to colleges, whether that be private or public, and they have different requirements based on what that scholarship actually is. But what I really encourage you to do is check out ncffa.org because that's where you can really dive into scholarships full circle. So our next one, let's talk a little bit about requirements. So as with jobs and different applications that you make, you have to have some requirements in order to get those scholarships. A lot of times these things can ask for resumes, applications, interviews, supporting materials, and those can be like essays, references, and more. So I know that sounds like a lot of work and you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, that is not worth it. I do not need a scholarship that bad, but I promise you it is worth it. All those little pieces that add up into the big part really help us to accomplish our goals and dive into our future careers. So let's review real quick. First, we talked about how a scholarship is a financial aid given to us. Second of all, we said it helps to pursue those goals. The third point was that NCFFA has scholarships that all of us could apply for and help us in the future. And then the fourth one is that they can have different requirements. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Why are scholarships important? Okay, so whenever we talk about scholarships, probably one of the first things that come into your mind is money. Expenses can be very hefty at times. Scholarships make those goals in your life attainable. Things in our life can be expensive. That's a proven fact, and I'm sure that many of you have experienced that already. Applying for those scholarships can help you prepare for the real world. You have to prepare that resume. You have to be able to answer those questions and have references. And I promise you, those will be very essential later on in your life. So let's talk about me personally. Here's my scholarship story. I currently attend North Carolina State University, and I'm pursuing a career in agriculture education. Me personally, I know that there is no way I could have attended NC State University without those scholarships. So me personally, I got NC Teaching Fellows, the Western Rand FFA Alumni Scholarship, and a few more that you'll see on your screen. Now, a lot of times, people don't realize that our involvement in FFA can lead to those scholarships. So without it, I would not have been able to get my FFA Alumni Scholarship, the Ag Youth Leadership Scholarship, or any of the ones that are listed there below. All my skills that I had been developing within the FFA really led me to be successful in applying for those scholarships. And if you see at the bottom, you'll see National FFA Marketing CDE Winner Scholarship. If you go to nationals and you compete in a CDE, I know it's a little different this year, but if you compete in those and you place a little bit higher, then they'll actually give you a scholarship that can contribute to your education as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Casey, and she's going to talk to us today a little bit about grants. But before we do that, let's talk about how we can be successful in scholarships and grants. So whenever we're applying for these things, before Casey even talks about it, there are some things that we can do to help us be successful. First, we want to be prepared. Make sure that we have everything that we need to be successful. Secondly, we want to work hard. If we're not willing to put in that work and effort, then we're not going to see the success that comes from it. Thirdly, we want to stay focused. You know, a lot of times we need some help at times. So if we need to step out of our comfort zone and ask for that help, we can also do that. We want to update our resume, build connections for references. But the most important part that I really want to stress to y'all today is apply. A lot of students miss out on these scholarship opportunities because they're not willing to apply. They're not willing to dive into that work that looks like a really hefty application. But I promise you, all the scholarships that I got were not just handed to me. I had to go through applications for hours and hours. And honestly, I applied to a lot more than were on that list. But out of the ones that I got, I am so thankful for them because almost all my school is paid for. And because of those scholarships, I'm able to attend NC State University and pursue my future career in ag ed. So with that being said, go out and apply for those scholarships. Look for those resources. And Casey and I are going to hit on those resources a little bit later. But like I said, we are going to dive straight into grants.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about grants and what they are. So grants are non-repayable funds or products distributed or given by one party to a recipient. So an example of this can be we receive a grant at our school and we get that from the government or from other businesses. So that's just kind of overall view of what a grant is. So why are grants important? Grants can benefit our school and our FFA chapters, but not only that, they can also benefit our SAEs. There are many opportunities with grants. There are two types of grants. We have block grants, which are limited on what you can spend your money on. There's a certain category that you have to spend your money on, and you have to list out your receipts. And then there's I struggle saying this, grants. And those are under a category 2, but you're kind of more freely about, you can spend those, whatever that category. So an example would be your SAE. Let's say you have a beekeeping SAE. You can spend that money in any kind of beekeeping. You can buy hives, bees, anything you want with that. So an example of that would be, our school got the Bayer Monsanto grant 2 years in a row, and that grant was worth $10,000. And with that, we were able to buy a farm bot and a CNC machine. The farm bot is kind of like a little robot that plants seeds, water plants, and weeds the plants. Then we have the CNC machine, which is like an industrial 3D printer, which is a really cool thing that we use in our FFA chapter. It really drew members to our chapter, which was something that was really neat to see. And we were able to make these really cool projects. I know with the CNC machine, we made signs, cutting boards, we made all different kinds of stuff. So there's really a lot of cool opportunities out there. And me and McKenna will talk a little bit about where we can find those.
Yep, so a big part of this workshop that we wanted to talk to you about today was where can we find those scholarship resources? Where can we dive into those and find out exactly how we can apply for those scholarships? One of the biggest resources that we want to throw out to you today is ncffa.org. So there is actually a link there, and I'm going to let Casey take over that in just a minute. But what I wanted to tell y'all is that ncffa.org has a lot of resources and ways that you can apply for scholarships. If you go to that website and click NCFFA at the top and then click scholarships, you'll see a list of all of them that you can apply for. Along with that, FFA.org, the national website, also has a lot of options for scholarships as well. So if you go to FFA.org, click Explore FFA, and then click Grants and Scholarships, that's where you can find that information. So I really urge y'all to take a picture of this, make sure that you have that information. But the big point that I want to stress today is ask your high school guidance counselors. Ask those people in your community that you know are willing to help. People want to help you and they want to see you succeed. So, just starting that conversation, asking those questions and being willing to, recognize that you need help with this is completely fine. Because I promise, I did not find all those scholarships on my own. I had to ask for resources. I had to talk to my guidance counselors. So it's all about networking and making sure that you're, actively seeking out those opportunities and those different resources that we can find. So again, I really urge y'all to take a picture of this. Along with that, if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact me or Casey. You can find our email on the NCFFA website, or you can check out our social medias.
So we can find grants at the same locations. So I am going to share my screen and show you where we can go to find these opportunities. So if we go to NCFFA and we go under Ag Ed, we can go to Teacher Resources, and then there's grant resources here. So that's just where we go to see our grants on the NCFFA webpage. And we can click on these little links and it'll take us to different opportunities. Another way that we can find these resources, if we can type in FFA.org and go to the National FFA website. When we get there, we can go to Explore FFA, and if we go all the way down, Award and Competitive Events, we can click on Grants and Scholarships, and we have these 3 tabs here. So let's say you want to look at an SAE grant. Then you'll just click on this tab right here, and it'll take you to everything you need to know. There's different categories over here, agribusiness, animal science, and you can click on those, and it'll take you to a list of grants. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Colton and Trip, or Chloe and Abby, I'm sorry.
You're fine, Casey. I'm going to throw another PowerPoint up on the screen, and we are going to talk about FFA opportunities in leadership and conferences. So give me one moment. Okay, so FFA opportunities, and like I said, my teammate Abby and I are going to be walking through what leadership positions are available and what leadership conferences you can attend as an FFA member. So starting out first with leadership positions, and these are any FFA members who might have this blue corduroy jacket on, and underneath their name you'll see a position, whether it's chapter president, region secretary, or even state vice president. There are positions everywhere where you can serve not only the future of agriculture, but simply your community. So that brings us to our first point, which is chapter officer positions. This is right at your local level of your school. For example, I was chapter president at Lakewood High School, and through this leadership opportunity, I was able to serve the community of Lakewood and of Roseboro and of Salemburg. Together, we were able to host canned food drives to support members of the Salemburg Christian Food Bank. We were able to host banquets to recognize our members for all that they've done. And at the end of the day, we were able to really live out that motto of learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. Our North Carolina FFA state alumni president has always said that the most you can do begins right at the chapter level. So I encourage all of you, the first step is to become a chapter officer. And this can be achieved by going to your agricultural educators, your FFA advisors, and asking them what the process looks like. It could be a simple application, it might be an interview, but I encourage you to reach out to your agricultural educators and your FFA advisors to see what those steps are. After chapter, we come to federation. So federation is a position where you're able to serve your county, and in some federations, it's neighboring counties as well. So for example, I live in the Sampson Federation, and it's composed of all of the schools here in Sampson County. One of the major opportunities for federational officers is Federational Leadership Conference. Not all federations are able to do these yet, but I've been to a few where state officers come in and the federational officers come in, and they host workshops on leadership development for students ranging from middle school all the way to high school. The next section of leadership positions is on the region. So North Carolina is divided in half, and on one side is the eastern regions, and on the other side is the western regions. And when you combine all of those together, you come up with 8 different sections in North Carolina. So as a regional officer, you would be serving 1/8 of the state of North Carolina. And together with your teammates, one of the major things that will be put on is the Regional Leadership Conference. Now this year, I know that everything is a little bit different. We've had to transfer most of our curriculum and most of our events online, but you're able to put together the Regional Leadership Conference. And this is where you're able to reach sometimes hundreds of members across a couple of counties in your region and able to share with them opportunities to develop that premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. Then next is state office. This is what the 6 of us here in this webinar are. We're state officers, and it's a process where you have to be elected through an application and a couple of interview events, and then even some just testing out your general agriculture knowledge and how we would be able to work together with each other and then ultimately work together with agriculture here in North Carolina. So we have 21,000 members here in the North Carolina FFA Association, and we as state officers are able to serve them, and not only them, but branch out and make connections amongst multiple industries. So we might be able to talk to the North Carolina Farm Bureau, or we might be able to talk to Farm Credit across North Carolina. So really a lot of different opportunities, but ultimately we're helping to solidify the future of agriculture. And then lastly, and when we see national office, I know I at least kind of become starstruck because national officers have always been people I've looked up to, and they are able to lead and serve over 700,000 agricultural youth leaders here in the United States of America. And while I've never been a national officer, we even have our own Ty Meyer this week preparing and interviewing for national FFA office. And so if elected, these national officers are able to serve in different regions of the United States of America, and ultimately they're able to represent the national FFA and what we stand for. So that's just a short recap of the different leadership positions available. I encourage you to reach out to your FFA advisors on the chapter level and talk more about these positions. I'm sure that they have these positions either at their chapter or they have been in these positions before. So definitely reach out to those. And next I'm going to toss it over to Abby, and she's going to talk about leadership conferences here in North Carolina and even in our nation.
Thanks, Chloe. So to kick things off, kind of going how Chloe listed out our leadership positions, I'm going to start at the federation level. And she briefly mentioned about how we do have federation leadership conferences, although it's not always common for some federations to do this. My federation I am from, Rowan, doesn't always do these, but it is definitely an opportunity I would encourage y'all to look in. So you may ask, well, what is in a federation leadership conference? And it is a leadership workshop presented by Federation officers, and sometimes a state officer can come and present a workshop or other guest speakers. Going right up to the next level is the Regional Leadership Conference, and it's very similar. The regional officers prepare workshops for the members of the region, and any guest speakers could come. It's kind of coordinated to how the regional officers want to present it to its members. And then at the highest of our state leadership conferences is the State Leadership Conference. And this is held at the North Carolina FFA Center at White Lake. Normally this year it was not, unfortunately, but definitely recommend going to this just for the experience to be there at White Lake because it is absolutely beautiful. It is a week-long experience. Not only do you get to be involved with leadership workshops held by state officers and sometimes past state officers, but you also get to live that camp life by doing chores, morning stretches, and there's even a social at the very end where you're able to mingle with all of your fellow FFA members in the state. The next leadership conference I want to talk about is MEGA, and this is held in the middle of the year, and it's similar to the other ones, but it's a little more on the professional development side where state officers facilitate different workshops based on age and time in FFA. So it is catered to your personal level of experience in the FFA. There is also another part of it where the state officer candidates can join so they can learn more about what it means to be a state officer and how to prepare. And similar to the others, there is also a social where you can mingle with all the other FFA members in our amazing state association. The highest level of a leadership conference is Washington Leadership Conference, otherwise known as WLC. This is where you get to attend in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., which overall is pretty amazing in my opinion. And this conference is based around solely community service and making your impact on the world. I was lucky enough to be able to attend WLC, and it's definitely one of my top favorite experiences I've ever been able to join. Next, I just want to cover the conventions we have. So state convention is where we held our state level competitions, and there's also sessions, which include sponsor remarks, competition results, state office retiring addresses, and there's also the career and expos, which I absolutely love because you get to go see the colleges and information that they can provide to you, and also sponsors and a lot of just cool different booths. And then the next one is National Convention, which is held in Indianapolis. And it's very similar to the other our state convention, but it's just on the national level. And it is amazing just to be able to see that sea of blue jackets all come together. And I know we see these numbers all the time of how many FFA members we have, but when you actually see it in person and seeing all the different states on the back of blue jackets, it really is breathtaking. So I really encourage all of you to at least try to put your feet in some of these different opportunities because I know it's definitely life-changing for me. I'll go ahead and throw it right back over to Chloe.
So for more information on leadership positions and leadership conferences and opportunities, I'm going to click on the first website, which is ncffa.org. Now, McKenna and Casey walked us through what this website looked like earlier, but in addition to scholarship and grant opportunities, you can learn more about specifically the conferences. So if you go to NCFFA, first with the positions, you can click on state officers. And while there's not information about federation or chapter officer, that would be more on your local level, you can look at the regional officers and see more information on running for regional office. There's the regional officer application. And in our next webinar, we'll be touching more directly on how to apply to these different positions and even more specifically working on applications for the end of the year. So then also state officer candidates, the same thing. It goes through the run through of what's expected of state officers and then study resources, the actual application, and then different applications for even the nominating committee. So additionally, there's you can go through and just learn a lot about North Carolina FFA, but the opportunities for conferences and conventions on the national level will be found on FFA.org. And this is the national FFA website. And just like you would do with scholarships or grants, you would go to Explore FFA, and here underneath events and conferences are all of the ones that we mentioned and then multiple more. So if you click on events and conferences, you can click on any specific one that's coming up particularly soon. I think there's still about 2 or 3 days left to schedule and register for National FFA Convention is right here. You can click on register, and then your FFA advisors and agricultural educators can register according to how many members would be attending. So this is an opportunity right in front of us that's really exciting. My teammates and I are excited to attend virtual National FFA Convention, and we'd love to have a lot of North Carolina FFA members joining us. So that's just a quick run through of the leadership positions and opportunities available to you. And then once again, those websites, ncffa.org and ffa.org, and then feel free to reach out to Abby or I through our NCFFA emails. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Tripp and Colton to walk us through CDEs and LDEs.
Hey y'all, as I'm sharing my screen with you guys, Colton and I are going to talk to you a little bit today about CDEs and LDEs and what they look like in North Carolina. So first off, a CDE and an LDE, that stands for Career and Leadership Development Events. These are just great ways for students in FFA in North Carolina to get involved and have actual practice in real life settings for a future career. And we put them in a few categories to separate them by. First one up here, I have plant-related CDEs. We have a ton of CDEs that I'll show you guys at the very end, but I just wanted to show you guys a few to start off with. Here's some pictures from an actual North Carolina FFA event. And you can see this is floriculture and nursery and landscaping. So if you like horticulture class and you like plants and working with them, identifying them, specifically in floriculture, you get to tie bows, identify floriculture plants. In nursery and landscaping, I know you take a test about landscaping, nursery, and you also do like a plant ID portion. So if you like plants, some of these CDEs might be something to consider.
Now, animal-related CDEs are your livestock judging and poultry evaluation CDEs. So, me personally, I did livestock judging and poultry evaluation, I think 3 out of the 4 years in high school, just because that's what I loved. I loved being with animals, and coming from performance, that's kind of what we always did was show livestock. So, with livestock judging, you go in there, and it's pretty much an all-day competition, and you get lunch, and you get to mess with animals all day, and that's by far my favorite of all of them. And then you have poultry evaluation, which is another kind of all-day activity. But not only do you get to evaluate poultry, you get to see the aftermarket, which are like your production. You have your meat evaluation pieces in that, as well as egg production. So that's really cool to be able to go in there and get those experiences, even if you really weren't ready to evaluate poultry yet. You get some really cool experiences. And then afterwards, you go and you're kind of like waiting for your scores to be tallied up and everything, sitting in the row. And Mrs. Lynn Worley Davis comes and will talk to you about poultry science at state, and you get all these opportunities, and you get the opportunity to kind of make connections at state or NC State to kind of build those relationships going into college. So that's some really cool things that just come from CDEs that you might have just signed up for at high school. So
another category we have is natural resources CDEs, and this is one of my personal favorite CDEs was land judging in high school. I did it freshman year, and very first time our team got, I think, third in the state for the junior division, and it was just really cool. For land judging, I feel like you always get to go to a really cool place. I remember my first year we went up in the mountains to Hendersonville, North Carolina, I believe, and you go out, and as you can see here, there's a ton of people. You go out, evaluate the soil, evaluate the terrain, and this is one, if you're hands-on and you like to get your hands dirty, this is a really good and fun one for you.
now when we're looking at professional development CDEs, we have like ag sales and farm business management. And these are two that are giving you more professional skills. So going out into the workforce and making those connections with those people that you really won't get from, like, say, forestry or animal science or like livestock judging, but you're getting to go and sit down and say a job interview or something of that sort. So you're getting those professional development skills that are going to carry you into your future. So if you don't want to go out and mess with chickens or you don't want to mess with livestock, you can always go and be a part of ag sales and farm business. So.
Moving on to leadership development events. These are more public speaking type events that we have in FFA. As you can see, we have Xana Tyndall, who is a past state officer, and she actually went to the national level for extemporaneous public speaking. There's also prepared public speaking and a lot of other different LDEs you can do, like creed speaking for our freshman FFA members. So these are just really good ones to get your foot in the door for public speaking, or if you really have a passion for talking to people, this is one you should really consider doing. And now, how do you access these resources? We've just talked about a few of the many CDEs that we have here in North Carolina. So I'm going to show you guys how to access these. So all you have to do is go to ncffa.org. And then if you'll go up the top here at NCFFA and click on the Career Development Events tab, it has a list of all these CDEs that we do here in North Carolina, and it has resources for each one. And as you can see, we have a few coming this year that are brand new to North Carolina. And if you look under these helpful links, this is more for advisors, practice tools, and all kinds of formal stuff. But if you go on this practice tools part, it will have all kinds of different past tests you can look at that these career development events use. So you can use these as study resources to help prepare yourself for all of these CDEs. And so CDEs are something that all members have access to. Just talk to your ag teacher about which ones that your school could be interested in doing. And there's just about something for everybody, whether you like public speaking, animals, plants, ag mechanics, literally anything you can name, you can do it in a career development event. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Ms. Bracey.